Hey, hey, hey. It's Filter Free Friday, y'all. Listen, I am so glad y'all here. Before I get too deep into this today, I am really, really grateful for every single one of you who have been praying for me since that accident on May 23rd. The doctor said that it would be 4 to 6 weeks before I started to feel like myself, and it has been 5 weeks, and I feel like myself. Um, I was worried because today is the anniversary of my mom's accident, and part of the pain that I was feeling was a result of the body and somatic things that needed to occur. Me holding some of that in my body, and I was worried about today. Worried that some of my injuries were going to show back up. So they have not. So you all have been praying, and thank you because I need it. Yesterday, I woke up convicted. I felt convicted. I had been watching some board meetings, I'd been watching some congressional hearings, and in that watching, I saw myself in a light that I didn't want to. Um, I was watching folks who were cutting people off, not letting them finish their words, who weren't listening, who were not choosing to be effective, but choosing to be right, argumentative. And I saw myself. I was like, oh my God, Nicole, sometimes you are that person, constantly finding the thing that is an issue, that is a problem, that you think needs to be addressed. And it's insufferable at times. It's exhausting. And so I woke up, I wrote a post and I was like, look, I'm gonna work on this. I'm gonna listen better. I'm gonna be better. And my God, today, did I not get tested right away? I I go to a meeting every Thursday, and I love to go because one of the things that they are focused on is empathy and using empathy for community building, for to create safe communities, using empathy in a lot of ways, actually. And but we had a violent week last week. If you're not from Kansas City, you might not be aware that we had several homicides in one 24-hour period. And, so I was expecting that the meeting was going to be emotionally charged and intellectually challenging, right? And so I had gone into this meeting expecting that, you know what? I am not going to say much. I'm not going to say much because I want to listen. I want to be better. But while I was in this meeting, a black male police officer, this is a public meeting in front of 80 people, said, I'll paraphrase and I'll mix up what two black male police officers say to protect the guilty. And just so you know, I'm protecting the guilty because this is a systemic problem. This is not an individual problem. But between these two men, black men, one of whom is around children often, this is what was said. When I see young black boys in hoodies with backpacks, I am instantly, that is the word verbatim, instantly suspicious. Every juvenile at night who has on a hoodie and a backpack is suspicious. They ain't going to school. Why they got a backpack? Ain't no books in that backpack. Half of them can't read. It didn't stop there. They mamas out here kicking and drinking. They out here kicking it and drinking. One of the officers, to his credit, was being curious. He was saying, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do about violent crime that's up? But the other officer because I'm trying to be an empathy revolutionary, I don't always know. Like, when you have to slow down to think about what you're going to do, sometimes the moment misses you, right? So now that I am actively practicing empathy, I am sometimes thinking about in the moment, do you address this issue or do you back up and think about if there's a better time, a better way, right? So what I did was walk out because I knew I wasn't emotionally regulated. I knew I was angry. I knew I was upset. And I know that today is the anniversary of my mom's death, and I'm struggling, thinking about if it's going to show back up in my body. I got a lot going on. So I know when I got a lot going on, don't say nothing. So after this man suggests that Black children with backpacks on and hoodies are criminal, and another is asking, should we detain them? I walk out into the hallway. I just kind of hold myself. This is what I've learned about thematic therapy. Just kind of hold myself, soothe myself, give myself the hug that I wish somebody could give me, right? One of my colleagues walks out and hugs me too, right? Because he is an expert in violence interrupters. He is an expert in an option besides arrest for our most vulnerable children. And he's sitting in a room with people who act like they know how to do surgery when he does surgery of this kind every day. So he walks out too. And he just holds me for a second, and I appreciate it. And I go back in and I decide I am going to address this privately, not publicly, because I had also missed part of the discussion while I was in the hallway. So I privately walk up to this brother and I say, hey, you might want to make sure that you are informed when you are talking about certain things. But before I got there, I did say, I agree with you that we should be focused on collaboration and that it is only in partnership with the police that we can address some of these challenges. He doubles down and says, basically, that's your opinion. If you offended, that's your problem. And I would have said it again if I want to. Now, here's what you need to know, because it's accurate. All right. So here's what you need to know. There was a reporter in the room. And all I could think of is, do we have no shame? He said he would have said it again. And if you happen to just be joining, what he said was, detain juveniles at night who have on a hoodie and a backpack because they ain't going to school. They don't need that backpack. Ain't no book in that backpack because half of them can't read. And the more disturbing thing in the room is that some people giggled. Don't worry now. Because I am who I am, we gonna work that thing out. If it take the last few days I got to live on the planet, we gonna work it out. And if we can't work it out, I'm damn sure gonna be real tired trying. But what I decided was that this is a more pervasive issue. This is not about who that person is. This is about how can we make sure that the people who are adjacent and watching this thing, this ain't about me to be the one that's speaking up every time. It should have been so socially unacceptable in that room for that man to say that they damn near got booed out of the room. That's what I believe. Now, where I get stuck is, what do we do with shame, right? Like, do I think he is bad or do I think he has done something bad? And in the moment when someone is publicly harming, what is the responsibility of the empathy revolutionary? To give a public response. Because to me, yeah, you don't shame people for who they are, but we got to challenge what they say and do when it endangers the dignity and safety of others. Now, what I'm grateful for is that the sister from the juvenile detention center stood up and she was like, look, man, none of those homicides related to juveniles, first of all. And she said, it is not criminal to have on a hoodie or a backpack. And so we can't start detaining children because they have on hoodies and backpacks. And The juveniles ain't had nothing to do with the homicide. So why are we bringing them up? The police officer, one of them said, I don't care how old they are, because she was wanting him to distinguish between juveniles and young adults because they're not the same. And she also, I talked with her after the meeting, and she also helped me to put some things into context. In all of Jackson County, not just Kansas City, Jackson County, in all of Jackson County, they don't detain white children. There ain't no white children down there. This city is only 28% Black. So, what is going on that is happening that is causing this disproportionate impact of who gets arrested and who gets detained? That's why I decided that on the anniversary of the death of my lovely mother, Sister Gertrude Price, we're going to do some training today, because we got to shift some mindsets, y'all. This is a class I used to teach when I was trying to teach leaders how to be more inclusive and how to understand their bias. This is from the work of Dr. Erin Reeves. She wrote a book called The Next IQ. She puts out a newsletter. It used to come out more consistently. I miss it, because she used to ask groups of people to distinguish between these groups and say which group is more powerful: heavy or thin, married or single, children or adults, people in the LGBTQ community or heterosexual folks. Who's more powerful? Poor people or rich people, Black people or not Black people? Who's more powerful? Men or women, people who live in urban environments or people who live in rural spaces, people with GEDs or college degrees? Which group is more powerful? And you can ask this question. I used to ask it in rooms of thousands. I've asked it in rooms of a dozen. The answer is clear. Thin people who are married, who happen to be adults, heterosexual, rich, not Black, men living in urban environments with college degrees. That's the list. There are people who will try to throw in some nuance and say, well, poor people are just as powerful as rich people. Rich people out here buying elections. That's not true. Folks will be like, women and men are equally powerful. Yeah, in theory. Y'all just stripped all of our rights. All of us have been young at some point, and yet it is the only group that every one of us have been that at some time, but yet when we get in the dominant position, we discriminate against folk. And if we cannot acknowledge what is that there are social power structures, we will never be able to fix these kinds of problems where people who are policing us and who have the power to decide who goes to jail and who doesn't, if we don't honor who has more power and who doesn't, we're in a bad spot. And so there are kind of three aspects of this thing. One is the personal aspect, one is how we interact with each other, and one is the system of laws that create the structure that make it okay for these kinds of behaviors to be said in a public meeting with a reporter in the room in front of 80 plus people, suggesting that Black children are more criminally defiant than other people. And so when I think about this course I used to teach, one of the questions I would ask is, when you got older, as you were growing, who taught you what was socially acceptable and who taught you how to be? If you happen to be online right now, can you just drop in the chat? What are some of the ways that you learned how to be? Thank you, Rita. I appreciate you. I think I'm going to do my mama proud today as I address what this specific police officer, who also happened to be Black, was suggesting about Black children, saying half of them can't read, they don't have books, so there ain't no reason for them to have a book bag. So who taught y'all how to be? Just, drop it in the chat. My mama was one of the people who taught me how to be. And here's what you should know. In general, when we think about who taught us how to be, we learn how to be from billboards we see. We learn how to be from the environment we're in. We learn how to be from the parents we have, the media, teachers. We learn how to be from song lyrics. When you listening to a song lyric that says, I don't see nothing wrong with a little bump and grind, that is putting something into your psyche that is telling you what is socially acceptable and how to be. And so when you take a look at the media, when you take a look at what religion teaches us about who can be a preacher and who can't, and whose sexual desire is sinful versus whose is rewarded and we support, these kinds of things create personal prejudice. Everybody has these internal thoughts and beliefs that create just what we think. If I said to you, children should be seen and not heard, people are going to finish that statement and say heard. If I say a woman's place is in the, people are going to say the home or the kitchen. So yes, Stacey, our parents, some of our teachers, music, TV, these things teach us how to be. And so when you consider all of these things that we are exposed to, they create a set of beliefs inside our head about what is right and what is wrong and what is socially acceptable and what is not. Everyone has personal prejudice. When people tell me they don't have personal prejudice, I'm like, have you never seen a billboard? If I live in the country versus living in the city, I think something different about what neighbor means. It's just the reality, and we have got to stop fighting and arguing with the reality of what is. Now, when those personal prejudices come out of our heads, we don't always think about it, but the way we show up and how we act towards people, who we favor, who we bully, who we exclude, who we think can't read, who we value, who we promote, all of these things are created by the internal stuff coming out of our head and how we gonna show up. So internally, if you got all these biases that tell you that there's something uniquely wrong with Black children and Black people, then you're going to come out your mouth and say they can't read. And when they have a backpack, they doing something sinister and wrong. Because when I know that man would not have, that Black man, when his police uniform with his badge around his neck, would not have made that comment and put white in front of those comments. He wouldn't have. Not anywhere in this America, he wouldn't have. Now, we look to confirm the things we already believe. This man in the schools, Rita, I'm so glad you're listening right now, because this police officer spends time in your schools with your children thinking these thoughts about Black children. And so, like I said, I did not do a good enough job in the moment addressing this. But you best believe, honey, at the highest level of every institution that I have connection to, this situation gonna be addressed. And it's not gonna be addressed by this one or two police officers, because these are the one or two who show up. I'm glad they're there. But the fact that you can stand up in front of 80 plus members of this community and a reporter, and everyone knows because we do introductions in the beginning, and say these types of things and then double down. It was the double down for me. That means you want to be the topic of my Filter Free Friday. It was, I would have said it. There were about a dozen children who came in later to let us know that they were part of Daddy's on duty, or I think, and the work that they're doing in community. I asked him, would he have made that statement if those children were in the room? 100% of them Black children? He said, I sure would have. He said, I sure would have. And so I believe the chief needs to know what kind of culture she has going on in her police department. And so when I used to teach this class, one of the things that I used to have people do as post work after we would go through internal prejudice and external prejudice was to think about a series of videos that they were encouraged to watch. And let me know, you can always reach out to me at info@drnicoleprice.com or here even, and I'm happy to send you the videos that I think help us to uncover our unconscious biases. But then I'd have them take the Harvard Implicit Association test, because it is gauging what you're thinking when you're not thinking. It is telling you about the internal prejudice you have, because most of us, if you know it, you probably ain't being honest about it. But here's the thing though, when people get their results from the implicit association test, most of the time, the way they respond is disbelief. Now this ain't right. This ain't right. I know how to outsmart this test, right? Like you ain't got to this thing ain't validated. Now it's the Harvard implicit association test, right? That's what it is. And folks out here talking about that that it ain't right. Now come on now. Like please, please stop it. Like just stop it. Some people accept it and they think about, okay, what can they do? Good, well-meaning people think it doesn't feel good and they're distressed and they're embarrassed or ashamed. And there's part of me that brings me here today going, dude, do I still believe what Brene Brown is saying about shame? I don't know. But here's what I do know, that unconscious bias everybody has, and it's not based on reason and sound judgment. This dude was being not logical. It was not being logical. And so when I ask people about shark bites versus mosquito bites, and I ask them which one is more harmful, most people think shark bites. But I ask you, how many sharks kill people every year? The number is less than a dozen around the freaking globe. But this little pesky mosquito here, 1 million people around the globe get killed each year by mosquitoes. And that's why I'm always concerned about not speaking up in these situations when somebody would publicly feel comfortable saying a kid with a backpack in a hoodie needs to be detained because they don't read. Their mama out here drinking and smoking, and they drinking and smoking and can't read. Here's some micro inequities. I would add to this list laughing when a Black male police officer stands up in a room of 80 people and says that half of Black children can't read. That I don't know. I think that might be aggression. But what's a micro inequity is the people sitting around laughing while he said it. See, because it wasn't funny to me. But here's an example of a piece of curriculum in kindergarten. This is from a kindergarten book, and I can't remember the name of the publisher. But when you look at this, what you see here, what you see is giving a 4 or 5-year-old child images. See, you don't have to teach racism and discrimination, see, because it's already taught. You don't have to tell people to be discriminatory. Look at this page. Carlson and Delosa, the source is right down there in the lower right-hand side. The children with darker skin have the associated words sad and angry next to them, and the children with lighter skin have the associated word happy and proud associated with them. I don't have to say anything to a children to internalize racism. And if you aren't aware of this kind of thing, you will miss it. But when I think about prejudice inside my head coming out into discrimination and how I act, everybody can be prejudiced. Everybody can discriminate. But who has their prejudice and discrimination backed by institutional power and control? The police backing it up. That ain't, listen, we don't have that support with Black skin. And so a couple weeks ago, it was a Reagan judge who was put in place, I can't even remember his name, who asked the question, have we no shame? Have we no shame? And so I wonder, listen, expect me to write an article about this in the next page, Kansas City. Expect that my social media posts are going to be about this today. Expect that to the highest levels that I can reach as a human rights commissioner for the city of Kansas City, and for a small business owner in this city, and for a person who has lived in this city for 48 years and is connected to banking and lending, policing, criminal courts and justice, nonprofit organizations, hospital systems. This gonna be addressed. In honor of Sister Gertrude Price, this is going to be addressed. And he might feel shame, but I ain't worried about him no more. Because this is what standing up in front of a room of 80 people with a reporter in it and saying that Black children with hoodies on and backpacks don't have books and half of them can't read. That's what that tells me is this. There's a social acceptance. One of my friends who's a criminal defense attorney said, well, at least I'm glad he said it. No. The fact that he felt comfortable saying that in a room with a reporter, you know what that tells me? That tells me that we have a systemic problem backed by institutional power and control. I ain't even gonna let this guy be the scapegoat, because here's what I know. If situation like this happens in a room, he gets a lot of social outrage, right? And he's the face of it. We fire him. Everybody goes, this is not who we are, right? People go to a couple little trainings, and then we go back to business as usual until the next event happens. Not about to let it happen that way. Mm-mm. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It is not going to happen that way. It is not going to happen that way. But when an uninformed officer, especially a Black man, says something that echoes these kind of racist tropes and profiling based on clothing and then doubles down on it, this can't go unchecked. And it means that it is much broader. And so I don't think that I should shame people for who they are, but we got to challenge this when it is attacking the dignity and safety of others. Because you tell me, what is at stake when someone says they are instantly thinking a Black child is suspicious and they got a gun on their hip? I can tell you what it means. Tamir Rice. I can tell you what it means. Ahmaud Arbery. I can tell you what it means. Sandra Bland, Breonna Taylor, Cameron Lamb. That's what it means. That's what it means. And the dangerous part is that when homicides are up, other people will support this kind of prejudice and discrimination. That's why y'all needed to get a PowerPoint slide today. Have we no shame? I don't know. I think what that's really about is, have we lost our sense of shared responsibility? This is our community. How do we not know not to say some foolishness not like that in front of a crowd, let alone under the auspice of the badge and the uniform? The connection between those two, I can't even fully explain to you how hard that was for me. I can't tell you how hard that was for me. The meeting yesterday was only an hour, and there were dozens of people who had lots of things that they wanted to say about how they felt. But here in the city of Kansas City, what we know is that violence interrupters help to reduce violent crime, to get it almost to nothing. It has worked in Boston. It has worked in Chicago. It has worked in Omaha. But when our internal prejudice, when our internal bigotry comes out in the form of discriminatory language, and it is backed up by institutional power and control, we got a major problem. And on this here June 27th, the day the Lord decided to call my mama home 14 years ago, I am reminded that my responsibility is to leave this world better than I found it. And if that means that I have to speak out when others are being silent, that's what it is. It's Filter Free Friday, y'all. We got work to do.